Good morning. We can still stay standing.
Okay, I haven't had my tea yet.
I got the faith in you.
I got the faith in you.
I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see. My faith is guiding me. Yeah. I got the faith in you. I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see. My faith is guiding me. I got the faith in you. I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see. My faith is guiding me. I got the faith in you. I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see, yeah. My faith is guiding me. I got the faith in you. I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see. My faith is guiding me. I got the faith in you. I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see. My faith is guiding me. One more time. I got the faith in you. I got the faith in me. I got the faith, you see. My faith is guiding me. My faith is guiding me. My faith is guiding me.
Good morning. My name is Carl Jansen, and welcome to Unity of Walnut Creek on this fantastic spring day. I don't care what the calendar says, it's spring to me. Please join me in turning to the camera and waving hello to our friends at home. Your presence in our spiritual community is very much appreciated. I invite you to turn your cell phone to silence and enjoy this sacred service time together. Our minister, Reverend Kristin Powell, will be our speaker this morning, and I'm very pleased to once again announce that Naren and Janet are our music today. Yay! Thank you. Always energetic and exciting, and I enjoy it every time. Unity is a positive path to spiritual living. At Unity of Walnut Creek, our mission is, in loving community, we empower spiritual growth by modeling and teaching universal spiritual principles. Our statement of faith, I invite you to affirm our statement together, and there we are. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, the all-loving goodness of God. If you are new with us for the first time, I invite you to raise your hand if you're comfortable to do so. In the back. Oh, a couple back here. Great. There is a connection card. We'll bring you a packet, and there is a connection card in your packet that you can complete, and you can take that to the bookstore, which is right across the patio, and receive a welcome gift, which includes a wooden necklace handmade by one of our congregants. And if you are new today and didn't feel like raising your hand, which can happen, you're still more than welcome to go to our welcome table and go into the bookstore. So we appreciate having you here today. Thank you. For everyone, connection cards are available in the seat packet in front of you. With this card, you may submit a prayer request, and our prayer chaplains will pray with you throughout the week. You may also share feedback to us with these cards. If you request information, our staff will respond to you during office hours, and our ushers will receive your cards in the offering later on in the service. So now it's time to say hello to your neighbors. Please take a moment to greet the people immediately around you, which is in the room.
For just being so dang cool. Oh, that feels good.
I just want to thank you for what you bring to me,
Sweet God.
I just want to thank you. Your love has set me free. I just want to thank you for all you mean to me. Ooh, yeah. Just want to thank you. Your love has set me free. And again, just want to thank you.
Yes, I do.
For all you bring to me. What you bring to me. Your spirit is thank you. Your love has set me free. Yeah, yeah. One more time. I just want to thank you. Thank you to him. I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you, sweet God. Thank you. I just want to thank you.
We have a few announcements today. The instruction sheet is available on the patio to help you print out the 2017 summary of your donations last year, and that'll help you out. Your Board of Trustees invites you to our community gathering right here after this service, and we will discuss intentions for the year and updates of our financial well-being and facilities. And yes, and I got to. I'm just right to the last. No, I wanted to do that. Kristin asked me to remind people online it will be streamed, so you can continue and watch it after the service, and bring your questions and ideas about all aspects of our community. Also, we're going to join Jan Garrett and J.D. Martin on Saturday, September 24th. But that's the anti-gun march that day too. March. Did I say a different day? Okay. September? How about? It'll actually be March. It'll actually be the month that we're in right now. For a singing workshop called The Heart of Harmony. Stay tuned. Jan and JD will help us create everyday harmony in our lives. Participants will be invited to sing with Jan and JD during the Sunday morning service and save $10 by purchasing your tickets in advance on the patio today. Please take a close look at today's bulletin for details of these and other activities. And now I'd like to invite Reverend Kristin to the lectern.
So I want to tell you about next Sunday. Next Sunday, Greg Lavoie is going to be here. Anybody ever heard of Greg Lavoie? Yeah, a few of you. So he wrote the book Callings. That's when I first got introduced to him, and I fell in love with that book and his style and his writings. And then he presented at the Unity Convention one year. And, you know, sometimes people are great authors and not such great presenters. Well, he's both. So I think you're really going to enjoy him. He's very authentic, and he's talking about his second book, which is Vital Signs, The Nature and Nurture of Passion. And his workshop will be interactive, so he's inviting you to bring a journal and a pen so that he can help you work through the areas where you may be stuck, where to free up some of that passion and to really support the areas where you are feeling passionate. So I think you'll get a nice taste of him at the first 2 services, as we often have that format, and then you can decide. But at 2 o'clock, Greg will be here with us, and I'm thrilled that he's interested in coming to Unity of Walnut Creek, and I hope you enjoy him thoroughly. So plan on next week taking in Greg Lavoie. And you can find lots of interviews and things of him online. He's well known, and his book, Vital Signs, is in our bookstore, so you can check that out as well. Thanks. Meditation time. So I invite you to take a moment to maybe take the things off of your lap, perhaps even close your eyes and take in some nice music to get us started for our meditation time. So we do let go, we release whatever may be on our minds or hearts today, turning it over completely to the light. Whatever busy thoughts may be taking place within us. We allow that to dissolve now. We let go and we let God. We turn off our cell phones. Yeah, we we just keep our eyes closed and allow the truth that is right here for us. The stillness that is available. Thank you, God, for whenever I encounter a distracting thought, this habit, this practice of communion allows me to stay centered. Whenever I remove a complaint or a criticism, stop gossiping and turn to the truth, I am freed to feel the joy, the light, the infinite love that is available to me. And so we open our hearts and our minds and even our bodies with the breath. Opening the belly and the chest, feeling the strength of our backs, holding us up, supporting us. And in these few precious moments together, we turn to the light. We rest in the light. We feel the open exchange with Spirit of who we are, the substance of which we're made. And nothing stands between us and our God. We let go and we let Spirit be known and felt in us in these precious moments of silence. And so with nothing blocking our way, with a soft front and an open heart, we greet our own joy, the joy of spirit and the joy of the world. Thank you, God, for reminding us to let go. And so it is.
Let it go to the light. Joy I feel. In the sacred joy, I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy, I melt again. Go to the
We'd like to thank Tyler and Lisa and Kristin for letting us come back here and cause a little trouble. We're digging you, baby. You've
Right
been
back
here a
at
year
you.
now?
Almost.
Almost a year? Okay.
Yes, the energy's good here. You guys are rocking it.
We'll send you a 40-pound box of chocolates from C's Candy for your birthday.
In the meantime, enjoy the music.
I surrender all I am, letting go across the land, rising up to expand all I am. Thoughts are mist that sail away, gently, slowly find their way. Beautiful light, ribbons in the wind, ribbons in the wind. I surrender all I am, all I am. I surrender all I am.
Thank you, Narayan and Janet. Awesome. How's everybody doing on the bracelets? No complaints? That's nice. It was good. It was a good setup, wasn't it? So for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, let me catch you up. So last week we began a series, a two-part series called The Hidden Power of Lent, and we talked about the importance of fasting, and particularly fasting from negativity, fasting from complaining, from criticizing, from gossiping. And we took the 21-day complaint-free challenge. So if you didn't get a purple bracelet, no worries, you don't have to have a purple bracelet to participate. All you need is like a rubber band or another bracelet that you designate as your complaint-free bracelet. And what you do is you put it on one wrist, and that makes day one. And all day long you pay attention to what you speak or write, for those of you who are clever and told me you're going to continue to complain on your Facebook posts. So it's the out loud expression, whether it be writing or in words. And that's what you're monitoring. So what we're trying to do is get away from complaining, gossiping, and criticizing. But it's not about pointing out a mistake or holding somebody accountable, or, it's not that kind of thing. So there is a distinction. So Eckhart Tolle gives a great example in his New Earth book. He talks about complaining is like when you tell the waiter, "How dare you serve me cold soup?" It's not complaining if you say, "My soup is cold, would you mind reheating it, please?" That's a different energy. So you know what the energy is from which you are coming when you are speaking these things. And you monitor yourself. There's no cop, being the complaint-free cop for other people. So so then once you make it through the day, you just keep it there, and the goal is to keep it on the same wrist for 21 days. If you do find yourself complaining, gossiping, criticizing, whatever, you move it to the other wrist and you start over. So that's the challenge. When you make it through the 21 days of this challenge, then you can start challenging yourself on what you think. But first we start with the outer expression, see if we can master that, okay? So now we're all caught up, we're all on the program, and we can move ahead to part two. So part two today is about looking at Jesus, the complaint-free mystic, and how he dealt with his process, his spiritual evolution, and his journey. He was initiated, as we all are, right? We're all on that hero's journey that Joseph Campbell talked about that includes times of trials and tribulations. Anybody ever have a time of trial or tribulation in their life? Yeah, we all understand this, as we have had those times of great triumph and breakthrough, right? So that's part of the journey, the spiritual journey as a human divine being. And so Jesus, of course, he was baptized in the River Jordan by John the Baptist, and this was the beginning of that initiation. And then he was led by Spirit out into the wilderness, into the desert, to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. And so during that time, he's fasting and he's praying and he's being prepared for his ministry. And at the end of that 40 days, it says in the Bible that the devil came to tempt him. Now, the devil in unity is not a being. It's not, we don't believe in a place called hell or a being that's, guarding the gates with pitchforks and, fire and so on. So, it's a fun story, and it gives you the image, right? It's a great imagery, but we don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that there's actually a being called the devil and a place called hell. But in unity, we look at the devil as the adversary, the adversarial mind. Okay, so it's that part of the personality or the mind, the ego, that can be kind of a trickster, and can tempt us to get off our alignment, to get off the path. Wikipedia actually has a really nice definition for temptation. It says, temptation is the fundamental desire to engage in short-term urges for enjoyment that threaten our long-term goals. Yeah, so we all know what that's like, right? We're all very familiar, I'm sure, with temptation. and the times that we have given into it and the times that we have said no to it and how that has worked out for us. We know the journey, right? So in Jesus' experience, imagine you've been fasting in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Chances are you're feeling pretty weak in your body. You're feeling really hungry. And you're in that kind of state, right? And along comes the devil, or up comes the adversarial mind, right? And the first temptation that Jesus deals with is a temptation that I'm going to call consumption. It's the temptation to consume. It's the temptation that brings up for us a kind of grasping or craving that which we wish for. And in the scripture, it says that the tempter came and said, if you are the Son of God, then just command these stones to turn to bread. You know, if you're who that you say you are, or who they say you are, then just, do the transformation thing that you're able to do. And Jesus replies, it's written. He's a good Jewish boy, and beyond a boy, he's a rabbi now. He's becoming a rabbi. He's coming into his own as a spiritual teacher, and he knows the scriptures really well. And so he says, it is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by the word that comes from the very mouth of God. And so he's saying, I don't need your temptation. I'm not going to break this fast just because you're taunting me to show off. That's not where I want to head. And so he's staying true to his long-term goal. He's staying true to his full initiation process. And how often for us along the way do we get some kind of craving or that kind of graspy energy, right? I need this thing outside of me. And sometimes it's for food, or it's for, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, what it is that you grasp for, you tend to long for. Not like in a heart desire kind of longing, but in that kind of it's got that more kind of grabby energy to it. And so when we are in that place, that's that adversary coming up to kick us off our game, to get us out of the alignment. And it's part of our initiation into the next steps of our spiritual journey as to how we might relate to that temptation that's being given to us in the moment. What will I do with that temptation? Will I give in to it? Will I cave to it? Or will I stay true to whatever commitments I've made to myself, or what I believe will be for the highest and best good? So a lot of times it's staying true to something that has more of an ultimate place we want to go, more of a long-term goal, or more of a general commitment that we've made to our own evolution. You remember the band The Temptations? They sang things like, I'm going to make you love me. A little graspy, right? Or this one real clear, ain't too proud to beg. You know that one? So when you get in that kind of beggy space, right? When you're there. Sometimes we do it with people, we want that person to be in relationship with, and we get in that sort of obsessive space around that person. Or maybe you remember that from long ago, your youth, that you've grown beyond, So these are the kinds of temptations we might deal with, the kind of things that might put us in a place of craving or grasping. And it's much like, the monkeys in India that have been given a way to be recaptured and relocated. In 2001, there was a plague of monkeys in India, actually. And if you've ever been to India or some of these other places where monkeys run free, you get to experience their aggressiveness. They want your food and they want it now, And this was happening in large numbers. The monkeys were getting into people's homes, stealing their food. They were biting people. So there were so many of them that the towns got together and said, look, we got to capture these monkeys and relocate them. This is getting really out of hand. So they did the traditional way of capture, where they took their old emptied milk jars and they tied them to the ground. They put them out around their homes. And they put in the jars a sweet, what they called a lolly. And so all these jars filled with lollies, the monkeys, of course, came no problem and got right into those jars and grabbed the lolly. The thing is, the monkey couldn't get its fist out of the jar if it was hanging on to the lolly, so there they are, keep getting stuck and repeating this motion, If they would only let go of the lolly, they could slip their hand right back out of the jar. And they were so obsessed with the lolly that the captors would come right up to them and they wouldn't let go. They'd still be holding the jar, and so it was very easy for them to relocate the monkeys. But don't we kind of become that way, What's your lolly? What's that thing that you just put your hand in the jar and you won't let go, Literally, those monkeys were caught with their hand in the lolly jar, And so we too find ourselves, catch ourselves, and recognize for ourselves those temptations that we're caving into that aren't really working for us anymore. It might also have been something that you would reach out to in the past that gave you comfort. And do you realize, you ever have this experience where you go back to that old thing that you used to do for comfort and you realize it's got nothing for you anymore? So sometimes that's your own test, right? To see how am I doing with this? And you realize, don't need it. So that's kind of one of the ways that we're dealing with this temptation. There's other ways that this might show up for us, not just in kind of outer substance kinds of lollies or this sort of love, lust kind of energy that we can get with other people. It can be other ways where we have a need that sort of gets a little bit blown out of proportion. I had a staff member many years ago who had just a craving for appreciation and acknowledgement to the point that, we couldn't keep up, It was like I need a regular feeding of appreciation and acknowledgement. And it was beyond just the universal need we all have for appreciation and acknowledgement. And so we had many conversations about, you got to find it inside. It has to be this sense of innate appreciation so that you can go about the world and do your thing without not having to have everything have some kind of validation of your worth and your, some kind of approval. And so we may have those kinds of things. That may be your lolly, that you realize I have a really high need for whatever it is, and when I don't get it met, I get really upset. And so working with that a little bit. So it can be something where you make friends with, this is a need we all have. We all want a little bit of acknowledgement or whatever it is, and yet it can be more balanced because we find it within ourselves. And so that's another way that this temptation might show up for you. So any given number of needs that you may have, and notice that you really come back to that thing that you're really needing quite a bit, and see how you might get that met in a healthy and balanced way. So it's also about just trusting, trusting Spirit that we have everything we need, right here inside, right? And so we can always go to that, when we fill this well with our practices, we can always go to that full well and get what we need. Adyashanti he's actually a local teacher. Is anybody familiar with Adyashanti? Yeah, some of you are. He was trained in Zen, in Zen Buddhism, but he's become very universal in his teachings. He actually wrote a book about Jesus recently, and it's called Resurrecting Jesus, Embodying the Spirit of a Revolutionary Mystic. And he too talks about these temptations of Jesus and different things in his life and how it mirrors our spiritual journey and our spiritual evolution. The way he sees this first temptation is that it's really about understanding that instinct for survival, the fear that comes up around survival. And so he's encouraging us to look at that a new way and to recognize, well, we all have been taught that, our greatest instinct is for survival. He says, maybe it's not. That is an instinct we have, but maybe our greatest instinct is actually for love. Because if you think about it, there are numerous examples of people who give up their lives, right, so that someone else may live. There's lots of stories of incredible things of people, mothers beyond the strength of the normal human body lifting up cars to release children, you know, or parents knocking the child out of the way of a car and taking a hit themselves. And not only for their own children, but even for other children. And soldiers and firefighters and police officers. You know, there's all kinds of heroic stories that are really about grounding in that instinct for love and protection, not so much survival for myself. So there is that deeper instinct, and he's suggesting to us that what Jesus is facing in this temptation and what we all face is that overriding that knee-jerk kind of survival instinct and digging deeper to the instinct for love. And so to ask ourselves, you know, we can say, oh yeah, I would always choose love and connection over survival and fear. But it's easy to say when we're nice and calm and cool and collected in here and our bellies are full and, you know, we're not in that kind of situation. But when we are in those situations, that's when that really gets tested. That's when the temptation can come forward. And the second temptation that happens to Jesus in the desert is really about hubris or specialness or even arrogance. In this one, the devil comes to him and he takes him to a holy city. So you know this is like a vision that's being had. And he goes to the top of the holy city, to the temple, to the pinnacle of the temple. And he says, you know, if you are who you say you are, if you are the Son of God, you can, you know, just jump. Because you know the angels will minister unto you and they will lift you up. They won't let you dash your foot even upon a stone. And Jesus says, don't put the Lord God to the test. Again, I won't be tested. I don't have to prove anything to you, you know? I don't have to show that I am able to do these things because those would all be a showing off kind of demonstration of the ego, and I don't need that. I know who I am. I know what I'm able to do. So it's that kind of quiet confidence, that sort of knowing of who we are. We don't have to prove it to anyone. And so you can think about that for yourself, those times when maybe you want to say something because you think you might sound smart. Or, you know, and then you can just kind of check yourself and see, why am I saying that? You know, and maybe that's why I'm saying it, so maybe I won't say it. You know, because you know it's that temptation of the ego to get that kind of approval or validation or to sort of show off of how far you've come. In this temptation, we can fall prey to the idea that we are special. And I know you've probably been told in Unity you're special, but you're not. It's the bad news. Dang, right? But you are important. That's the difference, right? Can you hear the difference? Because special says, I'm compared. Special says, I'm separate. Important says, yeah, we're all important. We all share that. So there's not that kind of separation. There's not this idea that, oh, because I've read more books or because I've been on the journey longer or because I can levitate or I see phenomenon or I have visions or, you know, I've had an out-of-body experience that I got this little edge on everyone, you know? That's the temptation though, isn't it? When you have an experience, I mean, it's tempting. And it's not just tempting to share it because it's a really amazing experience and you want to share it. That's one thing, but it's how we come off with that sharing and then how we begin to think about ourselves. So it's that game that the ego plays of, I'm going to puff myself up so you will be diminished and I will feel bigger, or I will diminish myself so you can feel big and puffed up, you know? That is one of the ego's favorite games, comparison. And as Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And we want that joy that we spoke to, that was spoken of in our meditation. You know, as we let go, we open to that joy. As we let go, as we open ourselves, as we empty ourselves of these temptations and say no to them, which is exactly what Jesus is teaching us. There was a student that Adyashanti tells the story, and I've heard it before too, this student who had been working with a Zen teacher, And he went, as they often do, to have an interview with his teacher. And his teacher said, "How's it going?" And he said, "Well, actually in my day-to-day life, not so good. You know, my spiritual life has been great. I've had these big shifts, and I feel really great about that. But my family life, not so good." He says, "My wife says, I'm not really paying attention to her. And my children say I don't spend enough time with them." And he said, "Well, do you?" And he said, "Well, no, not really. Because I just want to be, in this great spiritual space and in relationship with, God." And, probably didn't use that term. But anyway, you get the idea. And the teacher says, "Well, come to this retreat and see if your wife will come with you. We've got a 7-day retreat coming up." So his wife wants to save their marriage, and so she agrees to come, even though she'd probably have other things she'd rather do than meditate for 7 days. But she comes. And so the teacher says, "Okay, I've got a special place set aside for you in another room, and there's a bed in that room, and I want you two to just spend the next 24 hours in that bed. I don't care if you don't interact in any way. You both need to be on the bed for 24 hours. And so 24 hours go by, there's another interview, and the teacher says, "How did it go?" And the guy says, "Well, for 10 hours we didn't speak. And then we started to chat a little bit, and we started to relate a little bit again." And he said, "Great, go back and do that for 24 hours more." And each day it was like this until the 7-day retreat was over and their marriage was saved. And what happened? The man came back down to earth. And he realized, wow, yeah, we've got something here. There is a connection here. This is valid. This is part of the spiritual journey, after all. And so there's a temptation that can happen on our spiritual journey where we get so airy, so fairy-airy, so in the clouds, so transcendent that we forget that we're of no earthly good up there. And that's not why we were sent here. So we take that energy and ground it into our lives, and that's where the work is, and that's where the good is shared. So it's really important to stay grounded, to allow ourselves to be connected to the earth. So if you need to lie on the earth or walk barefoot or sit on the earth or connect with the elements, the fire and the water and the air and the earth, and just garden and put your hands in the earth. All those things will ground you and bring you back down and allow you to, of course, have these wonderful spiritual experiences, but allow them to be integrated on your journey. So don't fall victim to the idea that I'm special or separate or superior in some way, that kind of hubris or arrogance. That's the temptation we're talking about here in the second temptation. The third temptation then is more about power. So what happens in this one is the devil takes Jesus to a very high mountain. And I just imagine the devil with his arms sort of draped around Jesus. Jesus feeling extra thin and weak. And he says, "You can have it all, look at that. Look at that kingdom. And there's lights down there, and there's probably food and all kinds of fabulous things that you could have down there. And you can be the ruler of it all. I mean, you're the king. You got this. You can reign over all this, And so Jesus has been through all this initiation, and that could be a little tempting, couldn't it? To have that kind of power, to be the king. But he's not buying it. He's still staying strong in who he is and his alignment with Spirit. And he says, "Get behind me, Satan, away with you. I worship the Lord my God and only serve that God." So this is when we address that adversarial voice in our minds, or that ego, that tempting ego, and we say, "Get in your rightful place, ego. You are not meant to run the show. You are a helpful servant, but you are meant to serve the Spirit. So get in your place, and then you can do your work, So the ego itself can be relieved of this bravado that it's creating, this unnecessary temptation, and that things can once again line up. So these three temptations are that temptation to consume, that consumption, that grasping, and that craving kind of temptation. And the second temptation, that idea of specialness or hubris. And then this last one is about power, about dominating kind of power, power over, not real spiritual power, power with, collaborative power, but this idea that I'm on top, or I can control. And there are, again, subtle ways this can work in our lives. You might say, oh, I'd never do that. I'm not interested in that. I'm all about teamwork and collaboration. But look more carefully, because there may be ways that you get a little controlling. Ever want your way? Ever do almost anything to get your way? You know, where you can be a little manipulative or a little dominating in different ways. So you just notice those subtleties of how this temptation works. Because really, this is the thing, it's in the subtleties. It's not in these very obvious ways as the mythic story is laid out for us, but in these more subtle ways that we might get into those power struggles for domination in some way, or to be right, or to have our way, and we can get, some of us approach this in different ways. It might be in that overpowering way, or it might be in that more backdoor sort of manipulative kind of way. But whatever it is, we can fall privy to that kind of temptation. And so we're being asked to say, no, I serve Spirit. And when I serve Spirit and I follow the wisdom and the guidance of Spirit, the way things show up is quite different, isn't it? Things do tend to work together for good when we are following the path of Spirit and the wisdom of our own intuition, rather than taking these tacks of trying to maneuver and make happen a situation that requires this kind of power over or domination. Merriam-Webster defines power as possession of control, authority, or influence over others. And so it's that kind of power that can be tempting when we're offered it. And yet how we might use that power for such good. If we get that it's spiritual power that we have, if you get to be in a position of where you do have influence over people, to use that power in such a way that it's truly spiritual power, it's a power with, that is incredible. And when you are in that kind of space, then you're in that kind of space that is, it's humble. It's a kind of humility that comes with that spiritual power. So you'll know the difference from that feeling of gratitude and humility, versus when we're in the ego, it's more of a feeling of domination and control. And so it's a whole different kind of ballgame. It's a whole different kind of fuel. The ego's fuel is temporary fuel. It can feel like a powerful spurt, like if you had a moment of being angry and you sort of, dump that anger on somebody, that can feel very powerful in that moment, but sure doesn't feel very good a few minutes later, does it, when you realize what you've done. And yet, if you can rechannel that in a more positive way, it can have a much bigger and more spiritually effective land for the other person. So it's said in the story that after all of this temptation, that the devil then left Jesus. And the angels then came to minister unto him. The angels came and waited upon him. And we know metaphysically that angels are divine ideas. So it's like when we face down our temptations, when we say no to them and yes to Spirit, we are in that sort of angelic realm of divine ideas, of feeling like we're supported and we're guided along the path with a sense of clarity and insight. So just to recap, some of the things that we can do to navigate the temptations is to take our daily bread, right? In that first temptation, that's what Jesus is really saying, the Word of God. I take in my daily bread. That's where I get my food. There's another time in the Scriptures where the disciples are urging him to eat, and he said, I have food of which you know not. So I'm drawing upon the food of Spirit, the practice, and that's where I get sustained. So having our practice is sort of that grounding piece, that daily bread that keeps us infilled, so we're not so busy reaching out for these other things in life to fill us. And then there's that groundedness that I mentioned, that staying grounded. And so we can be really grounded. And then when an idea arises or an urge arises, we can, in the addiction field, they say, surf the urge. You know, so you can just surf the wave of the urge. I had a friend that was quitting smoking, and she said what she realized, and I think she learned this actually in research too, that if she surfed the urge to have a cigarette for 30 seconds, it would go away. Now, it might come back again, but then she'd just surf the wave again. And so it's kind of like this idea of giving yourself that space. So allow yourself the space to surf the urge that's up and see if it's still there after you give it your designated amount of time, whether it be 30 seconds or 45 seconds or whatever it may be. And then allow ourselves then to be really grounded to the earth as well, so that, you know, we're using the earth itself to be a foundation for us in our spiritual journey when we're feeling a little bit further out, a little bit more in that transcendental kind of realm. To stay true to our intentions, you know, to keep walking toward our intentions, whatever those may be, the goals that we've set for ourselves, to stick to the path, to stick to the journey, to stay committed to our spiritual journey. And to fast from whatever stands in our way. So if it's complaining or criticizing or gossiping, whatever it may be, judging, whatever our tendencies are, we fast from those. And that's why this 21-day process is so good, because it brings to our conscious mind some of the ways that we're speaking and some of the things that we're putting out there. And so we can catch ourselves and correct it in the moment and form a new habit. That's also a scientific period of time, 21 days. Scientists say we need to break a habit fully. And then to release just any obstacles to our good, the power of the word. We talked last week about that release aspect of affirmative prayer. So noticing when there's a temptation and just saying, that temptation has no power over me. I'm not going to give away my power to that. I'm going to just surf the urge and allow myself to land back right here where my power is set inside of me, in my heart or in my solar plexus, or wherever you feel that sense of grounding or sitting upon the earth and feeling it all the more. And then finally, just knowing too that as we grow older, this thing with temptations becomes a little bit easier. You know, Winston Churchill said, you don't have to worry about avoiding temptations so much as you grow older, because temptation starts avoiding you. I guess that's a little bit sad, but true, isn't it? So really what we're about is just noticing, right? Paying attention, noticing when the adversary is here, when that little temptation is on your shoulder, you know, whispering in your ear. I love that image of the devil and the angel, right? And which one are you going to pay attention to? And so just noticing what's there, what you're being tempted into, and take 30 seconds or so to see really which way you want to go with this, whether it be about consumption, or about this idea of hubris or specialness, or the idea of power and control. So we're just about saying no to that, facing down temptations and saying no to that, so we can say yes, an absolute resounding yes to Spirit. So let's say that together in affirmation form. I say no to temptation and a resounding yes to Spirit. So it is. Doing the offertory? The offertory? No, you do it. You do the blessing first.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Carl.
Gotta follow the script here. I just, when she was talking, I spent all my time in Unity working on special, and now I gotta go back. What a bummer. That's gonna knock me off my for a long time.
You're important, though.
We can grab in that, but I got a special go here. Our prayer chaplains are available after this service to provide personal prayer support. If you're a prayer chaplain serving today, please stand. There are people wearing lavender stoles. Barbara won't stand, but she's right there.
Garrett's back there.
And whether you have a joy or a concern on your heart today, praying with our prayer chaplains is a powerful opportunity to have your attentions raised up in consciousness. So we will now have our prosperity celebration. Let's open our hearts to the consciousness of giving as we align with the universal law of circulation. As we give, so shall we receive. In truth, there is no lack or limitation. Abundance is our true nature. I invite you to take your tithe or offering in your hand and repeat the affirmation with me. Together,
Divine love, one with me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful.
As we, whoops. Are the ushers? Music. Oh, I see, music.
Okay, Carl, it's your dancing debut. He's got it.
When your mood is sweet, turn up the heat, feel the connection. When the ground will seek to meet your feet, feel the connection. When you feel complete, when our hearts will meet and dance to the holy sound around. A million lights in a starry night, feel the connection. When the ocean waves with roaring waves, feel the connection. When you feel complete, then our hearts will meet and dance to the holy sound around. Connection. When I plan and scheme, a piper's dream, give me connection. Ooh, I'm letting go, I'm in the flow of the connection. When you feel complete, then our hearts will meet and dance to the holy sound around.
Feeling the connection. How about you? All right, let's bless these gifts, giving thanks for the abundance that is us. We are abundance in action in the world. We let go of any fear, any ideas of limitation. Let go of all the scarcity myths and say yes to Spirit and receive. So let's bless this together. We give thanks for the ever-increasing, unceasing flow of absolute good in our lives now. Amen. There is a yellow survey inside your bulletins. If you'll please complete those, and if you didn't get to put it in the offering basket, the basket will be back on the table for you to drop it in. Let's bring our children up. Come on in.
1, 2, 3. We are marching in
The light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God.
light of God. We are marching.
Marching.
We are marching. Oh, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching. We are marching. Oh, we are marching in the light of God. See a Habakkuk and yet cuencos. 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 See a Habakkuk. See a Habakkuk. See a Habakkuk and yet cuencos. See a Habakkuk. See a Habakkuk. See a Habakkuk and yet cuencos.
Woo! What'd y'all do today? Lonnie, you gonna tell us? Or were you passing it over to them?
Well, Carol was going to share some of her wisdom that she
Oh, Carolyn, you want to share?
Yeah. Today we talked about feelings. How many of you have feelings? we have lots of feelings, and next week we'll learn how to help our feelings listen to us.
Ooh, nice. All right. Well, let's close out. We have a new version of the prayer of protection. This is the new Unity-wide. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's bless our children and teachers first. Getting ahead here. So together, children, youth, and teachers, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the divine light within you. Butterflies included. All right, now we have a prayer of protection that's new. If you'd like to take your neighbor's hand, and we'll close out with this. Together, the light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is. I am divine. You are the love and the light and the peace on earth right now. So let your light shine and have fun.
Thank